Hi, and welcome to Cultivate CFO. Today we're going to review 5 simple steps to file your beneficial ownership information or BOI report in 30 minutes. So this is for those who are confused or lost with their BOI report, and we're going to review 5 steps: the due date, confirming that your entity needs to file, the beneficial owners filing the report, and keeping the report updated. As a disclaimer, so my goal in this video is to simplify the complex and help you take the next step in your financial situation. As such, this is not a comprehensive deep dive into every possible nuance of BOI reporting. This video, like all my resources, is intended solely for educational purposes and should not substitute for specific investment, financial, or tax advice. You always need to consult a qualified tax professional for guidance about your specific situation. I'd like to start off by answering the question, why do I have to file this report? Every few years, the government seems to find another onerous reporting obligation for business owners to comply with. They usually group this reporting in with tax return filings to simplify the compliance and the ease of processing the required information. However, this year we see a new layer of government reporting under FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Agency, that extends to more than 36 million businesses and their innumerable owners and key persons. This new filing requirement is called the Beneficial Ownership Information, or BOI report, and it requires each business to report the personal identifying information about a company's owners and key employees and decision makers. Basically, they want to know every part of your wealth and control your businesses to make sure that you're doing the right thing. So, what could be nefarious about that? Leaving aside my personal feelings about this whole thing, the reality is that it does need to be done if you're going to keep your business open, unless you want to take the government to court. I've had a number of my clients already call and ask about what they need to do. They've watched some videos, they've read some articles, but they're still unsure about what exactly is required and how to go about doing it. They are right that they need to be proactive on this filing because the cost of non-compliance for owners and senior officers is up to $500 per day, in addition to criminal consequences, which may include imprisonment for up to 2 years and a fine of up to $10,000. I'm just looking at this, it's really all stick and no carrot on this one. Here's the question that I want to help you answer today. Is this BOI filing easy enough for me as a business owner to do myself, or do I need a lawyer or an accountant to take care of it for me? So I promised my clients that I would write an article and put this video together and give them enough resources that they or anyone can confidently complete this filing requirement. The purpose of this video is to help you understand what BOI is, who needs to comply, and what you need to do, when the deadlines are, and then how to complete this filing. I'm going to walk you through step by step so that you can complete this filing for each entity that you're a beneficial owner of and avoid those penalties of mistakes and non-compliance. The reporting itself is fairly straightforward, but determining which businesses and which individuals need to be included can be a bit tricky. You need to take the following steps to be compliant with your BOI report. Step number 1, determine when your BOI report is due. Step number 2, discover if your entity has to report. Step number 3, list which individuals qualify as beneficial owners. Step number 4, file your BOI report. And finally, step number 5, keep your BOI report up to date. The first step is determining when your BOI report is due. First things first, you need to know what the timeline is to complete this report so that you know whether you need to get on it now or if you have some time to work on this. Keep in mind that if you fail to report your information on time, the penalties are $500 per day. This can really add up quickly. As of this video, the timeline for completing this report is as follows. The reporting entities that have been in existence already before December 31st, 2023, their filing deadline is going to be December 31st of 2024. Now, reporting entities formed after January 1st of 24 and to December 31st of 24, that filing deadline is going to be 90 days from the initial filing with the Secretary of State. Now, if you've started a business after January 1st of 2025, that filing deadline is 30 days from the initial filing with the Secretary of State. So hopefully that helps you determine whether your entity needs to file now, or maybe you're already late, or whether you have through the end of the year. Step number 2, discover if your entity has to report. So a BOI report is required for any entity that's created or registered by forming a document with the Secretary of State, including, but not limited to, limited liability companies, limited liability partnerships, C corporations, S corporations, regular partnerships, whether they're limited or general, and entities like these. These are all considered reporting entities and are required to file this report unless your entity falls under the following exemptions. The most common exemptions are nonprofits with an active nonprofit status, large operating entities with more than 20 full-time employees and more than 5 million in gross receipts, trusts that meet the requirements of paragraph 1 or 2 of the Internal Revenue Code, section 4947, and inactive entities. These inactive entities are exempt from reporting if they meet the following requirements. They have to be in existence before January 1st of 2020. They can't have engaged in any active business. They can't be owned by a foreign person. And they haven't experienced any change in ownership in the last 12 months. They haven't sent or received funds of more than $1,000 in the last 12 months. And they don't hold any type or kind of assets in the United States or abroad, including ownership in another entity. Kind of complicated, I know. There's 23 other exemptions. My guess is if you're watching this video, you don't qualify, but I've got them on the screen here just in case. But we're going to move on to step number 3. So the third step is listing each individual who qualifies as a beneficial owner. The final step before we actually go to file that report is to make sure that you know who your beneficial owners are and to collect all the relevant information from them to prepare for your filing. Now, this is the most complex part of this process for most filers, and so I'm going to spend a little more time on this section. If you nail this, the rest of the report's really quite easy. The key tests for beneficial ownership are as follows. First, ownership. Second, substantial control. Then we're going to look at some exceptions, and we're going to look at the company applicant, who's not a beneficial owner, but you're still going to be required to report their information. So looking at business owners who are required to be a part of this filing. Business owners who own 25% or more of a reporting entity are going to be required to file. If an individual controls 25% or more of a reporting entity, they're going to be required to be on this filing. Now, this ownership or controlling interest can be through any of the following. It can be through equity, through stock, capital or a profit interest, it can be through voting rights. And what they state is any instrument, option, non-binding privilege, contract, or mechanism that's convertible into any of these forms of ownership qualifies you for either ownership or controlling interest. Beyond the business owner, the second type of individual who's required to be a part of this filing are those with substantial control. Now, these include senior officers like your executive suite, CEO, CFO, the members of the board of directors, and anyone who has authority to appoint or remove the senior officers or members of the board of directors or of a governing body. These are those who make, direct, or influence the company's important decisions like reorganizations, mergers and acquisitions, making amendments to the company's governance documents, anyone who is adding or removing lines of business, if you're expanding into different markets, determining senior officers' compensation structures, dissolving the business, entering into contracts, and selling or leasing principal assets. Those are just some examples of substantial control. But it also includes those with indirect substantial control. That means controlling intermediary entities that exercise that substantial control, or financial or business relationships with other entities or individuals who are acting as nominees. So that all sounds a bit complicated, I get that, but we're going to look through a couple of examples so that you can see how to determine these beneficial owners. Now, I took these examples directly from the BOI Small Company Compliance Guide, and they do provide helpful and practical insights into how to determine who are the beneficial owners. A picture is often worth 1,000 words, so hopefully you can find a situation similar to yours in the following examples that will help you know who in your company qualifies as a beneficial owner. The first example we're going to look at is that of a single member LLC. So in this example, individual A is the sole owner and the president of the company and makes important decisions for the company. No one else owns or controls ownership interests in the company or exercises substantial control over the company. So in this example, individual A is a beneficial owner through both exercising substantial control and owning more than 25% of the company's ownership interests. The second example is a corporation with varied ownership. So this company's total outstanding ownership interests are shares of stock. There are 3 people, individuals A, B, and C, who own 50%, 40%, and 10% of the stock, respectively, and one other person, individual D, who acts as the president for the company, but doesn't actually own any stock. In looking at this example, individuals A, B, and D are all beneficial owners of the company. So individuals A and B own more than 25% of the company, whereas individual D exercises substantial control. And looking at individual C, that individual would not be included as a beneficial owner because they own less than 25% of the reporting company and they are not exercising substantial control. The third example we'll look at is an LLC with management and non-management shares. The reporting company in this case is an LLC with 2 managers, individuals A and C. So individual A owns 50% of the membership units in the LLC, whereas individual C does not. Individual B owns the remaining membership units in the LLC, but is not a manager. In this situation, all 3 individuals are considered to be beneficial owners in this case. Individual A, due to the business ownership and substantial control as a manager, individual B, due to business ownership, and individual C, due to substantial control. Our final example is a complex ownership structure. The reporting company here is a corporation with multiple indirect owners through company Y and company Z. In this example, individuals A, B, C, and F are considered to be beneficial owners. So let's review this diagram and each person's situation in depth. Let's look at individual A. They are a beneficial owner due to having substantial control as a CFO. But secondarily, they're also a beneficial owner through indirect ownership because they own effectively 27.5% of the reporting company. They own 30% of company Y, which owns 50% of the reporting company, so that's 15%. Then also they own 25% of company Z, which owns the remaining 50% of the reporting entity, which is 12.5. So the 15% plus 12.5, that's how we come up with the 27.5% for them. Next, we'll look at individual B. So he is an indirect owner of 35% of the reporting company, so does qualify as a beneficial owner. So he owns 70% of company Y, which owns 50% of the reporting entities, so that's where we come up with his 35%. Individual C is a beneficial owner because they exercise substantial control as the reporting company's CEO and president. Skip down to F and then we'll come back to D and E. So individual F is a beneficial owner because they have substantial control as a member of the board. Okay, so the two individuals who do not qualify are individuals D and E. And so neither D nor E own more than 25% of the reporting company, and they don't exercise substantial control. Hopefully those examples help you define for yourself who is a beneficial owner in your entity. Next, we're going to look at company applicant information. So the only other individual besides the beneficial owners whose information is going to be required is the company applicant. And this is only for entities created or registered after January 1st of 2024. FinCEN defines the company applicant as the individual who filed or directed or controlled the reporting entity's formation or registration documents. So look who filed your Secretary of State documents, that's likely who we're talking about here. Now there are some exceptions for individuals being included in this filing. That includes an employee who is not in a senior position, whose control or economic benefits from the reporting company are derived solely from their activities as an employee. Second, an individual who has only a future ownership interest through a right of inheritance. So once they inherit the interest, then they have to be reported, but before the inheritance, they are not included. The third exception is for a custodian, a nominee, an intermediary, or an agent of another individual who meets the beneficial owner definition. The fifth exception is a minor child. So in their place, we would put the information about the parent or the guardian. And then finally would be the creditors of the reporting company. So hopefully you have your list of all the beneficial owners you're going to include on your application. You're going to need to gather the following information for each of those individuals so that you can put that on the report. You'll need their full legal name, their date of birth, their residential street address. You're going to need a copy, this is either a PDF or a PNG file of an ID document. This is either a driver's license, passport, or state ID, or you'll need their FinCEN identifier. Now, this is an optional identification number that helps you streamline the process of completing your BOI forms. We'll discuss that later. And now we come to step number 4, how to file your BOI report. By this point, I hope you've confirmed that your company is a reporting entity. You've got a list of all the beneficial owners of the company and the company applicant, along with all of their relevant personal information. You're also going to need to gather some information about your entity. You'll need the full legal name. You'll need the alternate name, which is a DBA or a doing business as, a trade name that you're using to conduct business. You'll need your principal U.S. business address. You'll need the formation jurisdiction information, whether state or tribal or foreign. So this is typically the Secretary of State filing. You'll also need the company's EIN, their employer identification number, or a social security number or tax ID number for the entity. And then finally, you'll need the FinCEN identifier if you have applied for one. If you've gathered all that information, it's now time for us to go online to file your report. The link is in the description below. This can be done one of two ways. You can either prepare a PDF, which you'll later upload once you've completed, or you can file directly on the FinCEN website. The process is going to be similar, either option you choose, but I found that the PDF does allow you more time if you don't have all of your information gathered, and it can be helpful as a record for you. It also saves time if you have updates, as you'll only have to make the specific changes onto that PDF and then be able to re-upload the completed report, as opposed to completing the whole process from scratch online. I think that the PDF is going to be the easiest option for most people, so that's what we're going to review next. The PDF comes in 4 pages, and we're going to walk through those pages one by one. page number 1. This is likely your initial report, so you're only going to be selecting box 1A on this page. If you're completing a correction or you're updating your report, you're going to need to include the rest of the information. Now let's look at page number 2. The second page is for the reporting company information. You may want to select to receive a FinCEN identifier for this entity, and that's on line 3. If the entity holds ownership interest in other companies. This is going to enable you to provide the FinCEN ID of your company for the reporting of the other companies, instead of each of the beneficial owners' information for each of those sub-entities that your entity owns. So this is going to simplify the process and prevent your personal information from being passed around more than is necessary. The rest of the information on this page, you'll include your company name, company trade name, your EIN or tax ID number. You'll look at the jurisdiction of formation, right? That's where you filed your Secretary of State documents. And you'll also include your current address. Moving on to page number 3, this is where you'll report the company applicant information. Most of you are going to be preparing an initial filing if your company has been in existence before January 1st of 2024. If so, select the checkbox on line 16 and go ahead and move on to the final page. However, if you began your business after January 1st, 2024, you will need to complete this page with your company applicant information. That company applicant is the individual who filed the formation documents with the Secretary of State, and you may need to report up to 2 company applicants. Now, as with the entity FinCEN ID number we discussed previously, an individual can also obtain a FinCEN ID, though not in the BOI report itself. This both simplifies the reporting and provides greater security for your personal information. I'm going to include a link in the description below so that you can obtain that FinCEN ID for yourself if you so desire. If you do need to file the company applicant information and they don't have a FinCEN ID, then you'll need to complete the rest of this page. It's pretty self-explanatory. When you get down to the bottom, that identifying document type, you'll need to select whether it's a driver's license, a passport, or another ID type. You include the document number, the jurisdiction information, and then you're actually going to add that attachment to the PDF. This will need to be a PDF file, a JPEG, or a PNG file. We'll move on to the final page, page 4, where you're going to input information about each of the company's beneficial owners. Keep in mind that the beneficial owners can also apply for a FinCEN ID that I discussed previously, which is preferable if you own multiple entities and would like to simplify this process for each of your companies. Again, as with the company applicant on the previous page, if you don't have that FinCEN ID for the beneficial owner, you'll need to include that individual's last name, first name, date of birth, address, their identifying document information, and upload that as an attachment. You will need to include this information for each one of your beneficial owners, so do make sure that you go through and add each of them on that 4th page. Once you've completed that information, we're going to go back to page 1, and we're going to go through each of the steps to validate, finalize, and save your report. These steps are pretty self-explanatory. If you do find an error that pops up, you're going to need to go back to that area of the PDF and correct that information to come back. Once you've finalized and saved your report, the option Ready to File will become available to you, and you can select that to return back to the BOI report e-file website to submit your report. So when you get to this website, you're going to go ahead and complete your information, your email, first and last name, and you're going to select the BOI report PDF that you have saved. You'll select I agree and submit that form. Finally, do make sure you should receive a submission confirmation of your successful filing. You'll definitely want to print that screen or download the transcript to confirm your filing and save that away. All right, well, hopefully you feel confident in filing your BOI report, but keep in mind there is a final step to keeping your BOI report up to date. The question comes up as to whether you have to file a BOI report every year. The answer to that is no, but you do have to keep your BOI information up to date with any changes to the reporting entity or to any of the beneficial owners. FinCEN does require reporting companies to file an updated report within 30 calendar days of when a relevant change has occurred, or when you realize that you provided inaccurate information on that BOI report. In short, you're going to have to file an updated report to either correct a prior report, to update a prior report, or to indicate a classification change to an exempt entity. So examples of these kinds of changes are registering for a new trade name, if you change any of the beneficial owners, like adding a new CEO or changing any ownership beyond the 25%, or making changes to the beneficial owner's information, including obtaining new IDs, change of address, or a change of name. You're not going to have to repeat this filing unless you have any of these changes, but you do need to be ready to make these changes timely in order to avoid those penalties for late filing. What I can see happening in this is that you're going to get a beneficial owner who's going to get an updated passport or an updated driver's license, and they're not going to remember that this filing has to be changed. So you do need to keep up with all those individuals, make sure they know, make sure they're providing you with this information timely. Now, if you have obtained a FinCEN ID and your change of address or personal information triggers an update for your company, you are also going to need to update your FinCEN ID information, which you can do in the link below. My instructions in this video likely will suffice for 95% of the business owners out there, but in case you need additional information, I have a lot of links in the associated article to this video, but I've also got them in the description below. So if your situation is complex or you have additional questions that I haven't really covered in this video, I'm going to encourage you to go to those links below. They have a lot of frequently asked questions, they've got a lot of reference materials, and I've got links to each of the websites and pages that I mentioned in this video. I hope you enjoyed this video and this more detailed review of how to complete this filing. Hopefully this helps you save a bit of money and get this filing done correctly. If you need any further assistance or have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment below, or you can reach out to me on my Substack channel.